All right, if you only knew what went on in that little square building, I'm telling you. It's crunch time. Tomorrow is the day that the bills cross over. And just to give us a little example, we always try to do this. Rep. Andria Tupola is in the House. We're talking about a bunch of bills. As you know, she is in District 43. So when you talk about Maili and Nanakuli and all of these places, they're the ones that are struggling to come into town to go to work. So do a lot of rail questions end up on her desk? Yep, we talked about that and we will again. But in the meantime, I want to go back to a few other things. When we say that these things get cross over, what does it mean? It means that the House version of all the stuff that you guys been done, particularly over the weekend with the Finance Committee meeting, is in a button. This is what the House wants. Here you go, Senate. And then you expect another package. Aren't there many that are just, they got to get combined numbers because they're the same thing working on in a different area?
So a lot of the bills that we send over, there's a companion bill in the Senate coming our way.
Pretty soon they're going to merge the numbers.
So after we do the Senate and they do our package for the House, then we'd go into conference and then kind of work out the differences between these bills and decide which one we're going to go with.
Okay. Now, how important is it after the crossover? I do know that there's a lot of things that say, for instance, based on your constituents' input, email, whatever, you're going to want to push. These are the things that you want to do. Is it deal-making time pretty soon?
I think throughout the whole process, it's deal-making time. It's constantly talking to people, seeing what you can hold down. I mean, a lot of it especially for our district, though, it also has to deal with whether or not the department wants to do it. Because you see these bills come through and you think, oh, it must be from the department. A lot of these bills are not.
Yeah.
So there's deal in our bills and we had to ask them, is this bill from you? And they're like, nope, we're not sure who wrote it. So, and there was one that actually, I think allowed OHA employees to unionize, and of course OHA was opposed to it because it's a different statute of the law that OHA falls under. But long story short, a lot of these bills that you would think, oh, these might be a good idea, the department comes out and testifies against it because they're like, you know what, we're not for this, we don't have money to do it. But
what I heard, what we've talked about, is sometimes a group will come up with something they want. It's in their agenda, so they'll write a bill, and then now they need to have somebody introduce it.
Yes.
And somebody can introduce it, doesn't want to upset constituents, but by the same token, we might put on a bill, okay, I'm actually proposing this, but I'm not 100% sure that it's a good idea.
Well, and I think that when you have a constituent proposing a bill, you got to be more careful with that. If you have, say, for example, a task force, a group of people that have been working on an issue for years, and now they've vetted out the best solution for it, those are the ones that when they come forward, all the stakeholders are in agreement, and usually they just fly through because everyone's like, yep, this is the way forward. But a lot of times people will kind of jump that, not talk to stakeholders, propose a bill, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, what is this?
Yeah. I mean, it would be hard to say, for instance, unless you're a consumer, that this online tax doesn't make sense, right? I mean, I know that that's up there this year, that it's up for heavy discussion once again. I don't know who in the heck would enforce it, how they'd ever collect the money. But a lot of people say, hey, look, the only way I can survive in Hawaii is by doing a certain amount of my purchasing online, and so help me. So you must have your constituents. Hey, wait a minute! I don't want this thing taxed.
Well, and I'll say that was one of the only bills that, as a caucus, we all were a solid caucus no, and so that one actually got referred to finance and never got a hearing. So it's HB 398. You can look it up, but yeah, it would tax online sales, which for a lot of people in Hawaii, and I'll be honest, there's no more sports authority here. So for moms that have kids that go to sports, you either have to go to the mainland or you have to buy it online. There's no more soccer shoes at Walmart. You got to find these things online. So it's a really big disadvantage when you live on an island that doesn't have certain things.
As somebody that grew up in the retail business, I saw this, and we talked about this a lot, saw the big boxes coming. And what the big boxes generally did was good for the neighborhood. They brought in stuff competitively priced. And in many cases, the mom and pops that were getting displaced got employed. They became department heads, or they became part of it. They had an opportunity. But the problem was when somebody pulls the plug, like you mentioned, Sports Authority, and I know them well because I used to sell them fishing supplies, and they were a hungry bird in the nest. They bought a lot of stuff. But once they go away, the mom and pops that they replace are gone too.
Oh,
so now there's nobody. So like you're saying, the soccer mom, good luck. She's online.
Well, and there's maybe one soccer store on this island, and to buy soccer shoes, there's $150 for a little kid's shoes. So, I think really with online taxes and taxes in general, one, we have to watch it, and two, we should really be figuring out how this affects the people, the cost of living here in Hawaii, as well as small businesses.
Now, I do know, and somebody that in other days I would have been totally for this as a small business person. And I know that a lot of people's mission, whether it be a restaurant that sells T-shirts or whether it be just a store that doesn't sell anything but T-shirts, they resent the fact that these people aren't paying online. So that really means that we have to take really kind of a look at the cost of doing business in Hawaii, doesn't it?
Well, you got to think about a lot of the stores here that actually do both.
Mm-hmm.
How many of them have a brick and mortar and then also sell
Almost
online?
all of them. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Even small kind do that now. So anyway, that's that bill. It struggled through in the last several sessions. Is there anything different this time?
Oh no, I
Yeah.
think it's the same. Yeah.
Okay, now one thing I know that touches a lot of people. It touches their heart. It touches their soul. It touches their bill, and their compassion. The assisted suicide bill. I know that the caucus is opposed. I know that there are many people that are opposed to this from a human standpoint. But I know a lot of people that are in families that have a loved one that really need to have an option. It looks like it's moving up, but it looks like it's moving up kind of slowly.
Well, it is going to be heard by the Senate tomorrow, so it'll go for a full Senate vote. I will say that our entire caucus is not opposed. Some of them are for it, but the majority are opposed to it. And I think when the people were throwing out, when I say people, I mean legislators. When legislators were throwing out survey questions to the community, it would say things like, are you for end-of-life care options for the terminally ill?
Yeah.
Which that question is pretty slanted because, I mean, who would not want that?
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
What are my options? Of course I'm in favor of all options.
Right,
Yeah.
but
wait a minute.
We're not talking about end-of-life care packages. We're not saying that at the end of life that you and your family can't decide when to pull the plug. That is already actually in law. You can do that. And actually right now in law, you can end your life whenever you want.
And I want to tell you folks, there are many of you in families, including mine, that have had that experience where somebody, the family spokesman, talks to the doctor of the family member that's in hospice or wherever and says, okay, here's where we are. What do you guys think? And it's a very tough decision that people have to make.
Right.
But they make it based on their faith in maybe the doctor, their faith in their knowing their loved one, their faith in the fact that maybe they had somebody before they were in such bad shape said, hey, look, if I get like that, let me go.
Right. And I think the people who would know the best would be oncologists, people who deal with cancer patients.
Yeah,
this would be palliative care doctors. This would be psychiatrists, primary care physicians. There are many doctors that do not want the word physician on it. If people want assisted suicide, they can, but we don't want to assist that. Doctors were actually meant to go to school to help preserve life. Yeah. And so a lot of them are opposed to this, and we have some of them coming forward. But when you look at this, it is not asking if you're for end-of-life care options because that exists. If you want to commit suicide, you can do it at any time, and there's no penalty against it. What we're talking about is no prosecution or no punishment for those who assist others in suicide.
Yeah, and we're not talking about the person who's died. I mean, the person who's died is dead, right? We're talking about the other. Okay, there in another respect, I see that there are many people converted with their feelings about medical marijuana. A lot of people were violently opposed. But now there's clinics opening. It's getting the nod from a lot of parts of the country and here, and yet they're going slowly here. And I do know that are they going slowly because it's still a federal law?
No, I would say that for Hawaii, I'll just be candid for those of you who aren't sure where it's at. There has not been a dispensary set up yet. It was supposed to be ready to go by January of this year. So the dispensary licenses have been given out, but there's not actually a dispensary up and going. It got a place. So I would say for those of you who are for it, you got to really be careful because as we go through this, there are actually some organizations proposing these bills that are making it slower. And I'm not saying that I'm for dispensaries, but at the end of the day, if we're going to pass a law and then we're going to do a whole bunch of other ones that slow the whole process down, one, we're making it more expensive. They actually have one of the bills we're going to vote on tomorrow that wants to tax medical marijuana, which, it's already, all of these dispensaries are already going to have to pay GE taxes. They are not tax exempt. But to tax again something that they're going to consider medicine, this is just getting difficult because I feel like if we are going to be for helping people who have this condition, then taxing it, slowing it down, making it impossible doesn't really help the situation.
Okay,
it's the home of Hawaii's award-winning Mike Buck Show on 690. The Answer.
Open Gangnam Style.
Okay, so how do you get 25 pounds of rice into a 20-pound bag? Well, you got to work it out. It's all about the money. Tomorrow is crossover Tuesday. That means the bills from the House and the Senate have been hammered on the best they can, and they cross into the other houses. And this is where, because we got a couple, Andria Tupola from House District 43 Minority Monday is our guest today. We're going to talk about some more of those that are specific. But I think that people really need to know that if they are going to participate in government, pretty soon is the time they ought to get on it, because now every meeting and every vote you have is pivotal, because a lot of these bills that are crossing over are going to either go forward this week or next week, or they're going to die.
Right. There's still a long process left for us to do. I mean, we have to look through the Senate ones. They look through the House ones. There's going to be a lot of them that die. And there's
How long of a period is that where you guys get to look-see?
It's about a month. So
Yeah,
we have like a month to do ours, a month to do theirs,
Right.
and then we have a couple weeks of conference where we figure out the differences, and then we have our last vote. So.
But you know how people are. They're like, oh, yeah, I'll postpone that. It's mañana. I'm going to procrastinate.
Well, and some of them
wait.
that get pretty encouraged because it goes really, really far, and then at the very last minute, somebody will defer it, and
is it in fact that very thing that you need as a minority to worry about? Because you know doggone well you get lip service from a lot of things during the session, and then at the very end, oh really, you know what, we're sorry, but not this time.
Oh, a lot of them will do that. You know, they'll kind of like continue the discussion. They always say, we're going to continue the discussion, when really at the end they intend to kill it. So,
okay, what about this? I didn't understand this when it said there's a new. First of all, right now at the city level, people are complaining about the increased city budget. I know that's got nothing to do with the state, but it's big. And one of the things that the administration is looking at and be able to meet their numbers is an increase in real property taxes. Now, we have already had an increase in real property taxes because our real property is worth more money. So now we pay more money than we used to. It's like a double whammy.
Oh, yeah, because they make your house worth more, but now you pay more taxes.
Yeah. And so what I'm saying is they have the ability to do that. Where can, in order to meet budget, where can the state print money? It can't, right? You're operating on a finite budget.
Yes.
What differences do you anticipate there might be with the plea going out to maybe change the Department of Education and the Board of Education a little around, and what about the way that the teachers say, hey, just put the GE tax up. You can take care of us. This is what we're expecting of you.
Well, and what the HSTA proposed this year was a constitutional amendment, which would go on the ballot, asking that part of the property taxes go to education.
Right. Which they don't at the present time.
No, they don't.
Yeah. But isn't that, we are unique that in most states, the state pays for the education, right?
Yes.
Through state taxes.
Yes.
What sort of move is there underfoot to change this?
Well, currently, when we look at the Department of Education budget, what the governor submitted to our finance committee was a zeroed out budget. Mm-hmm. So they have all these priorities, and typically line item by line item, they fund the priorities. Well, most of them were zeroed out except for a few, and then there was a $10 million number at the bottom. So what the governor is proposing is that each school apply for a $10 million innovation grant, and that they can use that grant because they are saying that it might help schools more if they get the money directly. Well, some people are opposed to that, because if we're going to say that we have 5 priorities as a DOE, that we have Hawaiian language, this, whatever, but then we're not going to fund any of those, and then we're going to give each school the $10 million. So yes, maybe the money will go straight to the school, but then why are we making a strategic plan that says that there's 5 like overarching values when we're not going to fund those?
Yeah, and you know that therein lies the real bulaia here, because a lot of these things get to a point where they get approved but not funded, and nothing, and when it's not funded, it's done.
Well, we can suggest as a House what we would propose for the budget, and then we pass it to the Senate. They propose their version of it, but the governor can choose not to release it.
Yeah, jeez. Okay, we'll have to keep you, and we'll keep giving you constant heads up on that. And I do know that that's important, but I also do know that there's a number of things. We were talking about how the city last week is defending its shelter for abused and battered women that are afraid to go home with a TRO because of what might happen. Mm-hmm. I do know that there's a few things about domestic violence that we ought to take a look at. And I know that you spend a lot of time personally on this. What is the caucus's, what is the minority position on the couple of bills that have to do with domestic violence?
There's not too many moving around. I want to say there might have been some for funding. But I want to say, as a caucus, I don't know exactly everybody's stance. I do know that the women in the caucus, that we engage in a lot of women's issues and this past Saturday, I was able to host a domestic violence event in my community. And we actually gathered together with lots of different organizations, and we give out free prom dresses. So
I know. When I saw that, I thought that's really cool, because sometimes that's the make it or break it, right? When this little girl finally gets to go, and I mean, I can't tell you how lovely that must be. And even though sometimes you have to connect it to domestic violence, it really isn't.
Well, and I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to be proactive, because at these events, this is where girls first decide what kind of relationship they're going to be okay with, what kind of, person they're going to be okay with in the way they treat them. So we had the Coalition Against Domestic Action and Violence there, and their one of their members spoke as our speaker, and we had actually a few Mrs. Hawaii. We had a Miss Waianae speak, and the Miss Waianae, I was very impressed. She's a young girl. Her name's Letty, but she gave her story, which was that at a very young age, she got into a relationship that she stayed in for many years, and it was very abusive to the point where the guy broke her jaw in 2 places.
Wow.
And she said she stayed in it, and once her jaw got broken, she realized, like, how long am I going to let this person abuse me? And so she said that to this day, even though she's doing pageants, that her confidence is still shaky.
Wow.
And so it was a
Thank goodness she's doing the pageants, though, because I mean, otherwise, she regaining that confidence or that self-esteem is tough, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, for a lot of these young Miss Hawaii, Miss International, they've struggled with their worth, with who they are, with what do people think of the way I look, and so it was really cool because some of these girls look at these pageant girls and I'm sure they think they're all that. But the Mrs. Hawaii, who is actually the reigning Mrs. Hawaii, is my classmate. When she spoke, she said, in high school I was a very klutzy person.
Yeah.
And she said, and I remember she used to trip and fall, and now she's Mrs. Hawaii.
But I must tell you something that's sort of interesting, because while I knew this was going on, I was dial surfing, and I came upon this documentary about John Benet Ramsey and about these pageants, and this little girl who's so gorgeous, but that she didn't put on her own makeup, she didn't do her hair, she didn't do her thing. She was pushed into that life. But I think that sometimes isn't the bar set so high for some of these young girls that they say, I can never get there? And when you do something like give them a prom dress, you say, yes, you can. You can make a few steps in that area.
And Teresa Gillian from Domestic Violence Against the Coalition, she actually said that. She said, we have this media, we have this portrayal of women out there that's almost unreachable.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're constantly trying to achieve this standard that, do I look pretty enough? Do I look, good enough? Am I ever going to look like her? And what she tried to say is that, we actually are fine the way we are, and we should accept people the way they are. But you're so right. As soon as they get this dress, you should have seen the look on these girls' eyes.
I bet.
And some of the people who donated dresses, one lady, she actually went out and bought 4 new dresses to donate.
Oh my.
I know. I said, you
and
don't
by
need
the
to
way,
do that.
can't that be a real showstopper? I mean, some of these dresses, I know that some of these young ladies are, and their parents and their families are very creative, but I do know that there's also a few boutiques where you better bring a lot of gold shekels, because it's a lot of expense to do this.
Oh, it's hundreds of dollars. And girls could come to this event, listen to a few speakers, get empowered, inspired, and get a free prom dress.
That's the fun part, right?
Yep.
Okay, so, and one other thing, I want to know, I saw this from Rep. Tupola's office. You have an ukulele bash coming up. That's my favorite subject. What is it?
Oh, okay. So next Tuesday, we're hosting the first Westside Ukulele Bash. It's going to be at the Four Seasons, Olina. So we want to thank Olina Group for allowing us to use that location. But what's happening is we're inviting all the after-school groups on the Waianae Coast to come out and participate. Yeah. So from 4 to 6, they actually are going to be separated into groups with ukulele masters and ukulele builders.
Oh, cool.
So they get to learn the art of building it as well as playing it. And then at 6 o'clock, they're going to have the students perform. And then we have 2 guest performances by Carly G and Kalaeloa.
Both are ham. Hey, by the way, this is something that I can't tell you. There's more ukulele players and more ukulele being manufactured now in Japan and there is in Hawaii because of Jake and some of the other things that have gone on. But doesn't this really sort of in the big picture really help us in a lot of other areas? I mean, you're talking about these kids that play ukulele are likely to sing, and then they're likely to sing, they're likely to entertain, and they can always have that as a backup. They might be a doctor or, a bureau chief, but they can also chalang-a-lang on the weekends and maybe even make some money at it.
Oh, you're speaking right to my heart because I'm a music teacher.
Yeah,
I think you should always have music in your life.
Yeah.
If it's not your main occupation, it doesn't matter.
We've had a resurgence in the knowledge of the importance of music. And as a teacher, let me ask you this, there's some things that have been cut out of schools, music appreciation, art appreciation, some of the very things that are core building value things with us, we don't have anymore. Who's going to champion maybe really taking another look at that?
No, I think you're so right, and that's why we do these festivals and
Yeah.
these activities. Every ukulele festival that I've known is at the Waikiki Shell.
Yeah.
And yet almost all of our Hawaiian entertainers are from
In the
Waianae.
country.
So we want these kids to be inspired and have an activity out there where they can see, wow, all of these artists are from our side. Like Jeff Rasmussen's going to play right when the kids come in.
Yeah.
So
Do you get blown away at how good some of these kids get?
oh yeah.
I mean, I played ukulele. I collect them all my life. And I've seen some of these little whippersnappers that are 12 years old blowing circles around.
You gotta go onto my Facebook page because we're gonna post up a video from Carly G. She's 15 years old. She's from Kaiser High School, and she's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, now that's a good fun part. Now the other stuff is, and I want to compliment the IGE administration. I must tell you, I ranted and raved about it a long time, Andria, and I do know that we could do better. But right now, if you go onto the website, the state website, and you put in a keyword or two, you can get a lot of information.
Oh, very
Yeah,
good.
yeah, isn't that pretty good?
Yes.
Yeah. And do that. And if you want to get in touch with Rep Tupola, you do it by?
You can email me at reptupola@capital.hawaii.gov, or you can call me at 586-8465.
Happy Crossover Tuesday. See you
Thank
next week.
you.